Jai Shri Radhe Ji. Today is day 96. So Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Shri Krishna. Today is the beginning of Varta number 82, the story of Paramanandas Swami, a Kanaujiya Brahmin, one of the Ashtasaka poets, later known as Paramanandas. Bhav Prakash. In the eternal Leela, Paramanandas is the Saka named Toka and the Saki named Chandrabhaga. His door into Sri Giriraji is at Surabhi Kund. He was born in Kanauj to a Kanaujiya Brahmin. On the day that he was born, a wealthy landowner gave his father a huge donation. Paramanandas's father was so happy to have had a son and such a large donation on the same day. He therefore named the boy Paramanandas, the bringer of the highest bliss. On the day of the boy's naming ceremony, it was revealed that this name was already predicted. His father was even more happy. He gave away many gifts when performing this naming ceremony. Soon Paramanandas grew up. The father again celebrated the donning of the boy's sacred thread. Paramanandas is a very close Saki of Sri Thakurji, greatly graced and involved in all his leelas. When Sri Acharyaji was ordered by Sri Govardhanaji to appear on the earth for the sake of uplifting divine souls, at that time Sri Thakurji appeared with all his entourage. Many divine souls were born all over the place. Gopal Das has sung in his Vallabha Kyan, many souls appeared in various parts of the country. He travelled all over in order to shower his grace on them. Paramanandas had a very happy childhood. He soon grew to be a very qualified man and was known as a master poet. He composed and sang many songs. He became known as a Swami and had many disciples, including a huge following of musicians and artists. Once a drought adversely affected all of Kanauj and the Muslim ruler became crazy. He demanded taxes from all the villages. He stole all of Paramanandas's father's wealth. His parents commiserated with him that they had not yet arranged his marriage and now they had no money, so he would need to find a way to gain some income. They asked him to gather in all the money that he earned from his art and circle and use it to get married. He told his parents that he had no desire to get married and reminded them that they also had a large amount of money, but they never had never used it to any worthy purpose. If one gets wealth, one must use it to feed Vaishnava Brahmins. I will not amass wealth, he said, but you please take from me whatever food supplies, etc., that you need and spend your time worshipping the Lord's name. You have become penniless, so forget the attraction of wealth. The father addressed him. You have become renounced. You have been associating with renunciates, so that is why. We, however, are householders, so how will we be able to survive without gathering some money? We like to be praised for spending money on the family and caste members. The father left to travel to the east in order to collect some money. He did not succeed, so he went to the south. There he was successful, and so he stayed there. Paramanandas called his Kirtaniya musicians to his house, and he soon became well known throughout the town. He was really very expert at composing songs. Part 1. Once Paramanandas travelled from Kanauj to Prayag on the occasion of the special bath for the Makara Sankranti day. He stayed there for some time and, gathering many singers together, sang many of his poems. Many people came there to listen. At that time, Sri Acharyaji was in Adel on the opposite bank of the Gangaji river. Some of his entourage had to go to Prayag for some purpose and heard Paramanandas singing. When they came back to Adel, they told Sri Acharyaji that one Paramanandas had come from Kanauj and that he sang many songs. Sri Acharyaji said, Paramanandas is a divine soul, so it is only to be expected that he should be so gifted. One of Sri Acharyaji's water carriers, named Kapur Kshatri, loved classical music, and hearing about the arrival there of Paramanandas, decided to go and listen to him without telling Sri Acharyaji. He reasoned, if Sri Acharyaji knows that I am going there, he will be annoyed that I am neglecting my seva. Therefore, he did not actually go to Prayag, but held a desire to go in his heart. Bhav Prakash. There was a previous connection between Paramanandas and this water carrier, who is in the eternal Leela a Saki of Paramanandas named Sona Juhi. This Kshatriya was born in a family in Sudamapuri, and his father was a very corrupted man who associated with many women. He had a lot of money, but he wasted it all on his pleasures. After some time, the local king looted all his wealth, and put the 2 parents and the boy into prison. The father managed to bribe one of the guards to let them escape. They carried on running for nearly 3 days. They came to a forest. There a lion devoured the parents, but the 14-year-old boy escaped with his life. He was hungry and thirsty, so he sat down in the forest and began to cry. By the great grace of the Lord, Sri Acharyaji was passing through that deep forest on his pilgrimage around India. He asked the boy who he was and why he was alone and crying in the forest. The boy bowed down to him and told him the whole story. Sri Acharyaji asked Krishnadas Megan to quickly bring some Mahaprasad and some water to save his life. Krishnadas helped the boy to bathe and then fed him the prasad. The Kshatriya boy calmed down. The boy then begged Sri Acharyaji to keep him close to him. "I will serve you for as long as I live. You are now my father, my mother, and my lord." Sri Acharyaji replied, "Do not worry, you can stay with us." The Kshatriya boy stayed with Sri Acharyaji from then on. On the next day, Sri Acharyaji initiated him with the Lord's name and Brahmasambandh and gave him the seva of fetching water. After a few more days, Sri Acharyaji arrived in Adel. There the Kshatriya boy had the holy sight of Sri Navneet Priyaji and was filled with bliss. He said, "I was an orphan and had nobody, but now I have Sri Acharyaji's grace and the satsang of all his people, along with the divine vision of Sri Navneet Priyaji, Sri Krishna, who sits in the lap of Sri Yashoda Mata." That Kshatriya, whose name was Kapoor, found his mind to be fully absorbed in the form of Sri Navneet Priyaji. He was very keen to serve him closely so that he could also regularly have his sight along with his service. Sri Acharyaji is the Lord himself, he thought. Sri Acharyaji perceived what was in his mind and called him close, where he said, "You are extremely fortunate to be inclined towards seva." Then he granted him the seva of fetching water for Sri Navneet Priyaji himself. The Kshatriya boy was very happy. He bowed to Sri Acharyaji and said, "I was going to ask you about such seva. You are most merciful and have fulfilled all my wishes already." After that, the Kshatriya boy lovingly went to fetch sweet and salty water. After some time, Sri Navneet Priyaji began to grace him with his personal experience, but he did not have even a moment to take time out of the seva to go and see Paramanandas' singing. Part 1 continued. On one Ekadashi day, a Vaishnava came from Prayag to Adel to see Sri Acharyaji. The Kshatriya boy asked the Vaishnava about Paramanandas and told him that he usually sang but for between 1.5 to 3 hours every night. Today is Ekadashi, so he will sing for the whole night, he said. Hearing this, the Kshatriya boy became very happy and thought that he might get the chance to go and hear Paramanandas sing. He decided to wait until Sri Acharyaji was asleep and then go to Prayag to listen to him. Night fell and Kapoor, the water carrier, finished off his seva, went to listen to Sri Acharyaji's discourse, and then later on in the night he went to Prayag. At that time of night there were no boats available, so he decided to swim to the other shore. He was a good swimmer. He put on a small lower garment and tied his dhoti and upper garment around his head. It was the hot season, so he came by swimming to where Paramanandas was singing. He had never met Paramanandas before, so he sat at a distance. There were some of Sri Acharyaji's disciples who knew him. They called him over to them. Then they all went to sit close to Paramanandas. Some other artists started off the program, and then Paramanandas began to sing. He started off with a song of separation. Bhav Prakash. Why? Paramanandas, as recalled above, was separated from the Leela, and here he had not yet had the holy sight of Sri Acharyaji, nor of Sri Govardhanaji. When Sri Acharyaji shows Paramanandas Srinathji's form, then only will he remember the eternal Leela. The main principle of the path of grace is that when a soul gains the company of an accomplished Vaishnava, then only will the Lord grace them. This is why Sri Acharyaji sent his graced water carrier Kapoor Kshatri to him, so that he could also be graced. The water carrier Kapoor Kshatri was so blessed that Sri Thakurji never ever forgot him. They are always together. This is why Surdasji sang, "This merciful Lord suffers anxious separation from his devotees and runs behind them." And it has also been seen in the preceding Varta of Jagannath Joshi that when the king raised his sword to slay Jagannathji, the Lord came there and stopped his hand so that he could not. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are multiple examples of how the Lord plays with his devotees. At this time, however, Paramanandas was in separation from the Lord, and this is the mood in which he was accustomed to sing. Pada Rag Bihagaro. The inhabitants of Vraj, lost in separation, began to think, "Without Gopal we feel robbed and our bodies are dwindling." Mother Yashoda stands day and night just looking at the path by which he left, and if anyone calls his name, her eyes flow with tears. This town of Mathura is like a line of coal. If anyone passes through it, they also turn black. The poet Paramanandas now laments, "Without Sri Krishna I feel like the moon without the stars." Second Pad, Rag Bihagaro. In Gokul, everyone worships Sri Gopalji. Listen, Uddhav, anyone who wants to follow the path of yogic practice goes to Lord Shiva's town of Varanasi. Even though Sri Hari has left us and made us into orphans, still we would never leave him, bound to him as we are with a knot of love. Even when the moon is eclipsed, it still does not lose its cool. What type of terrible offence have we committed that he sent you here with a letter of instruction to practice yoga when we worship him only with love, and thus are now saddened? Paramanandas, the poet, now says, even in this state of separation, no sad lady will leave the Lord, storehouse of all beautiful qualities, just for the sake of liberation. Third Pada, Ragkanaro. Who is there who has enough love for the Lord to understand these matters, apart from Sri Nandanandan himself, whom I can tell, my friend, about whom can I tell, my friend, about the pain I am suffering in this body? Where now are those banks of the Yamuna river, and where that lovely play when we used to go to fetch water? Where is that forest resting place strewn with fresh flowers and soft leaves? The poet Paramanandas now asks, oh, where may I have the touch and sight of that form of the highest bliss with his lotus eyes and his delicate beauty? Pada, Rag Sorat. Oh, my lady friend, I want to meet Nanda Kishore. I have seen his eyes but once, and they have stolen away my mind. The long hours of the night are too many to count. When, oh when, will the morning come? How can I stay alive whilst I have to listen to the night bird's song? Those who have pure love in their hearts can never ever look at another. The poet Paramanandas now sings, stop beating your brow, O friend. That bliss-filled Lord will most certainly come to meet you. Paramanandas sang this kind of song all through the night. He stopped not long before dawn. All those who had come to that night-long session now returned home. Kapur Kshatri greeted Paramanandas with the name of the Lord and left. He was so very happy to have heard the compositions of Paramanandas. He thought everything that anyone has ever said to about him was true. Praising him thus, he reached the banks of the river. He swam back again to the other side. He swam fully dressed so that he arrived in a full state of purity. Sri Acharyaji had already woken up. Kapur Kshatri bowed to him and then started his seva. Wah. Aaj ke Anand ki jai. We will rest here, ready to restart the story of Paramanandas tomorrow. So Aaj ke Anand ki jai. Jai jai sab Vaishnavan ko Shri Krishna. Jai Shri Krishna. Shri Vallabha Hadish ki jai. Shri Paramanandas ji ki jai ho. Jai jai Shri Radhe.